Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming out today. I just want to say, before we get into our program, we have a special presentation that's going to be made by Representative Rogers and Representative Williams to the team, and then we'll introduce, then we'll have Representative Bud Williams come to the mic.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you. I'm Representative Dave Rogers from the 24th Middlesex. That's Arlington, Belmont, and Cambridge. I am really excited to be here because I'm excited to see the enthusiasm and the energy to tackle this terrible disease, a disease that's been neglected for far too long. And there's great energy and momentum, as you can see, to look around you today. So we're really excited, and I'm pleased to be partnering with my colleague, Bud Williams. We filed some really great legislation on sickle cell disease, and we hope to advance it. And with your support and help, I know that we can, and I hope we can get it done this session. I have with me a resolution from the Massachusetts House of Representatives commending the Massachusetts Sickle Cell Association for its recognition of June 19th, 2023 as World Sickle Cell Day. And I want to present it to Jackie Haley and congratulate her for all her phenomenal work.
Photographer.
Is someone coming?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Sickle Cell Warriors, we call you, in the house. You can make some noises. Hey, this is Dave. They call it the People's House, right? People's House. Jackie Haley, thank you for the tremendous work you do. And since I've been on Beacon Hill, this is one of the main issues, sickle cell. What a dreadful disease. This is probably my third or fourth panel in this amazing panel we have here. And I know you folks gonna get your selfies with Darren McCourty. We're trying to bring him back so we can start cheering for the Patriots again. I told him when the McCourty boys left, I left. Thank you, Dr. Azakar. And certainly, education is so important with dreadful disease. And the legislation will go a long way. I want to thank the House. We've been successful in earmarks, $250,000 last session, another $250,000 this session. That's just in earmarks, just so Jackie and the committee can do their work and can do their job. But the more you dive into it, the more you peel back the onions, and you come off the mountaintop and you get into the valley, then you understand what this dreadful disease does. And I think one day we're going to get a real count. It's about 5,000 in Massachusetts, according to MassHealth. It could be more. I suspect that it is. But it affects black people and other groups primarily. And I'm just amazed of the enthusiasm. I was at the ball, and the folks who have sickle cell. I just told a reporter, one of the only diseases you don't get a day off. If you got migraine headaches, even if you have cancer, it can go into remission. You have heart problems, you can kind of fix it. Sickle cell, every day of your life, 24/7. There's no time off. So it's very important that we work with Veritex, and thank you, Mr. Finneran, Chairman Finneran, and Jeff Sanchez, for what they are trying to do to get that gene therapy. There's no cure for sickle cell, none at all. So this amazing panel is going to take you through with some education. We'll continue to fight. We'll continue to, Crystal Haynes, thank you for what you do. Oh, by the way, I know she works in Boston. She is from Springfield, where I'm from. That's the 413, in case you don't know what it is. It's 413, Chris, just in case you didn't know. But thank you, and I've been educated, Dr. Alzakar. Thank you for taking me from soup to nuts on this issue. We're going to fight hard. We're going to be on the field. We're going to continue until we can find a cure. Hopefully, Cory Booker's legislation he has filed nationally will help us to finally earmark this disease. And I suggest if this disease just didn't affect black people, there would be a lot more attention to it. It's going to take us all to cure it, all to work. But to this amazing group, these sickle cell warriors, we call them, thank you for what you do. I'm just doing a little bit here to try to do a greater good. And the last thing I will say, when you go to the hospital and you go in any other condition, they will probably accept you. When you go to the hospital or the ER with sickle cell, you're rejected, like you're a drug addict. You're looking for a fix. You're in pain. Read Medical Apartheid. That deals with the healthcare system in this country since we came here in 1600s. Black people. We don't trust the system. Never have. Tuskegee study, read that. You'll understand why we feel the way we feel about this system. We got to correct this system. We got to work hard and make it fair and equitable for each and every citizen. So I do apologize for getting emotional, because I am emotional about this issue. So thank you, panel. Thank you, all the great work. And Mr. McCordy, thank you for coming in, for helping us bring awareness to you. Thank you.
So good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Jackie Haley. I am the Executive Director for the Massachusetts Sickle Cell Association. And I just want to say welcome and thank you all for your support and for being here today and for taking the time out of the day to join us to really listen to our panel and to discuss this important topic. We'd like to thank Representative Rogers and Representative Williams for this recognition. Rep. Williams, we just want to say thank you for partnering with us and hosting this event. Where did he go? So as you may or may not be aware, this year we had a bill filed in the House, which is our omnibus bill. And we just want to thank Representative Williams, Representative Rogers, and Senator Liz Miranda for heralding and championing this bill. And of course, we're praying that this bill will pass this year, which will expand access to care and quality of care for our families and the community. We want to thank all the legislators who have helped us to create history last year by advocating to have our sickle cell disease as a line item in the budget. Give them a round of applause. And a special thanks to Senator Nick Collins, Rep. China Tyler, Brandon Fluker Oakley, who were the first folks who championed the bill last year. But for 28 years, the organization has worked tirelessly as a volunteer organization to sound the alarm, raise awareness, advocating and fighting to ensure access to resources needed for our families. Our families have faced extraordinary levels of bias and neglect in a medical system that consistently marginalizes them. With sickle cell, they don't just have to cut through the illness, they also have to cut through the racism. It is at this intersection that our families are discounted, uncared for, and ultimately forgotten and not prioritized, especially in the emergency rooms. Why do our families have to wait 25% longer than other patients to get treated in the ER? Why do our families have to code switch and dress nicely before going to the ER to avoid being judged by healthcare professionals to receive the care they need? Black patients are 22% less likely to receive the pain medication they need. Our patients are often described as drug seekers and accused of feigning their pain because they don't act like they're in pain. They don't look like they're in pain. They now have to fight with staff and basically have to prove that they are in pain in order to receive treatment. Why is it when our patients tell healthcare professionals the doses they need to treat their pain and their disease, that they're not praised for being informed about their disease, but chastised and looked upon with skepticism? How could you know this? How could you know this as a patient? Ooh, I think I just messed up my thing here. Currently, there is no unified approach for increasing awareness or understanding for sickle cell among healthcare professionals. The lack of education about the disease and its complexity is a barrier to patients in receiving adequate treatment. The lack of clinical knowledge of the disease among healthcare professionals and the unfair stigma associated with it have lowered patients' confidence for our health system's ability to provide care that is so desperately needed. There has been little effort to track the disease population. We've been hearing that there are 100,000 patients in the US for the past 30, 40 years. That number has not changed in that time, which doesn't make sense. So of course, we're arguing, we do not agree with the numbers. We think it's higher. And you see Dr. Charles shaking his head, he agrees with me. This has resulted in our families falling through the gaps, and has left a severe lack of data to help us understand the scale to the issue in the US, and a lack of political will to use available policy levers to address this disparity. Now is the time to put the focus and investment needed to improve access to care. Create a registry, create a public awareness initiative, and fund fertility and preservation for our patients. 30,000 people are affected by cystic fibrosis in this country, a third fewer than patients affected by sickle cell disease. However, federal funding for cystic fibrosis is $2,807 per patient, compared to $812 for patients living with sickle cell disease. And don't let me talk about the foundation raising and research funding. Food and Administration has approved 4 medications for sickle cell disease and 15 for cystic fibrosis. Health equality is a fundamental right that needs to be strongly protected. We can't wait to address our families' unmet needs. We need to work together to reverse the impact of structural racism on sickle cell funding, research, treatment, and policy decisions. With that, I invite you to partner with us in ensuring that our families no longer suffer by themselves, but have a community that is caring and willing to fight to ensure that they too can enjoy the benefits that are so readily available to other prevalent diseases, and most importantly, remove the stigma associated with sickle cell disease. Thank you. So I'd like you to join me in welcoming our moderator. We're going to kick off. First, I just want to say thank you to the panel. We have an amazing panel today. You want to give them a round of applause? And to moderate this conversation, this well-needed conversation, is our own Crystal Haynes, who has been partnering with the organization for over 5 years, Crystal, right? To assist us in raising awareness and bringing attention to the needs of our community. She's an Emmy Award-winning journalist and an anchor at Boston 25, and has been a voice on the topic of race and social justice. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Crystal Haynes, and read her bio.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. All right, good afternoon. As Jackie mentioned, my name is Crystal Haynes. I'm the weekend morning anchor at Boston 25 News, and I have been partnering with the association. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say the wrong thing. I was going to say Greater Boston, but with the association for over 5 years, and it has certainly been my honor and my pleasure because this is a story that not only endures in communities of color, but also has a ripple effect across the state. And especially, it has an effect on the way that we treat the folks who are the most vulnerable in our healthcare systems. And that's everybody's problem, that's everybody's business, and that's everybody's focus and should be the mission, right? So I'm honored to be with you here to moderate today's panel, shine a light on a community that has not been given the attention it deserves, the sickle cell community. I want to first start by thanking Jackie, of course, and the entire Massachusetts Sickle Cell Association team for bringing us all together for this roundtable, and furthermore, their commitment and dedication to the sickle cell community. So let's give them a round of applause. I also want to give a special thank you to Representative Bud Williams for offering this beautiful venue, the State House's Nurses Hall, and for help setting up the roundtable today. I have a few more thank yous as well. Representative Montano. Did I get it right? Montano? Apologies. I'm reading handwriting. I'm just trying. Representative Diggs and Representative Giannino. Thank you so much. And all of the staff, of course, all of you all here, members of the House and the Senate. So let's get on with our program because I know there's a lot of information to be disseminated here today. With that said, I do want to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Charles Azar. Dr. Azar is a hematologist and the director of the Massachusetts Mass General Hospital's Comprehensive Sickle Cell Disease Treatment Center. We want to welcome Dr. Azar, and thank you so much for joining us. So, Dr. Azar, I would love for you to start by laying out the foundation for folks, telling us a little bit about sickle cell disease, a little bit of a Sickle Cell 101.
Sure thing. So, can you guys hear me? Awesome. So, sickle cell disease is, as Jackie mentioned, a life-threatening blood disorder that affects about 100,000 people in this country. And as Jackie mentioned, that number has not changed in 30 years. And the reason for that is because that number is completely made up. We are so far behind in our understanding of this illness that we don't even understand how many people are actually living with this disease in this country. And the reason for that, to rip the Band-Aid off really quickly, is that this is primarily a disease of black and brown people, and our healthcare system is intrinsically racist. And as a result, we have been denied the resources to be able to even tabulate how many people are actually living with the illness. It is a disease that touches every organ in the body. A quarter of our patients will have had a stroke by the time they're 45. Many of our patients will have had their first hip fracture by the time they're in their 30s. Many of our patients will have had their first heart attack by the time they're in their 20s. Many of our patients are not going to live to see their 45th birthday. And despite that, the system has provided us with little to nothing to be able to support this population. For the last 3 decades, we've had one drug alone to be able to treat this disease, and it remains the only drug that has been shown to help people with this disease actually live longer. No other drug has been shown to do that so far. Only in the last 4 years have new treatments begun to emerge on the market. Up until this point, those of us who work in the sickle cell world have had to scrape by for every resource that we can for our patients. And unfortunately, this is the fate that they've been handed as a result of our system. The most quintessential and the symptom that most people identify with sickle cell disease is the pain. And it is a pain that has been described as the worst pain known to humanity. A pain worse than cancer pain, worse than trauma pain, worse than labor pain. Many of our patients will talk about it as if it was a hot poker running through their body, or the sensation that all of their bones are breaking from the inside. And despite being in such excruciating pain, when our patients come to the hospital, they are mistreated. Their pain is not believed. They are treated like drug seekers.
Well, I've had the pleasure of being on other panels with Dr. Azar in other spaces, and so I know that pain management and the stigma around that, especially in ERs and in other spaces, is huge and needs to be addressed when we're talking about training with ER staff and things like that. Talk to me a little bit about your efforts in that space or the awareness that needs to happen in the medical space around that.
So absolutely. So the reason why we're so far behind is because there's an enormous lack of education, even among my own colleagues, about this illness. When our patients come to the emergency room, because there is so much lack of understanding around the disease, if they are in an emergency room that has experience managing the disease, they are fortunate. Because those are few and far between. Oftentimes when my patients are presenting to hospitals around the state, outside of the Boston metro area, we are often on the phone with those providers helping to guide them in even some of the most basic management of the illness. And it really comes down to systemic racism within our healthcare system. There are significant biases in place that unfortunately my own colleagues have not been willing to face head on, that are continuing to affect the lack of resources we can provide.
And I understand there are some new therapies too being developed, gene therapies like CRISPR and things like that. But of course, they're costly when they become more available, widely available on the market. And then that's when you'll also see some of those disparities in outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very excited about the prospect of gene therapy. Gene therapy could really revolutionize the way that we care for our patients. But there's a lot of unknowns surrounding the treatment right now. We're not sure what the FDA will approve. We're not sure who it will be approved for. We're not sure what insurance will pay for. We are very, very excited about this prospect, but we are cautiously optimistic. I want to make sure that my patients are not used as guinea pigs, that they're not being experimented on through this process.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm sure we'll have folks from the audience that can also ask you more questions about that, Dr. Azar. But I want to move on to Helen Sarpong. She is a sickle cell warrior. And Helen, I'd love for you to talk about what it's like to manage the disease.
Thanks for having me here today. Can you hear me? So I'm not going to focus too much on what sickle cell is, because Dr. Azar has done a really good job with that. But I will say that managing sickle cell...
You can't hear me, okay.
Managing sickle cell disease is an everyday, nonstop job. It is literally my job. For instance, this morning I woke up and I could not walk, so I have a cane that I have to use. My family is out of town, so I did not have them to assist me in my usual help, and that is they would help me get dressed, because I sometimes cannot do that for myself because of excruciating pain. So you imagine the worst pain you've ever had in your life. Maybe you broke an arm or something like that, and living that every day, every second, with no relief. And then to go into the ER and then looked at like you are a drug seeker, that you are not, your pain is not valid, that you are making it up, or that you look normal. When you look at me, I look normal, whatever that means to you. But in that moment of pain, I don't want to look normal. I want to receive care. I don't want to be judged on what's in my blood, something that I cannot control. So it's a long, long journey, and it affects every part of my life, my body, and the decisions that I make for myself. But I'm here today to put a face to sickle cell. I could be your mother, your aunt, your cousin, your daughter, that we are here, and we've been around for a long, long time. I'm fortunate enough to be 48 years old, so I've lived past that 45-year-old, but I want to continue to live longer.
Yeah, Helen, you mentioned the impact it had. It's a full-time job managing your sickle cell. Talk to me about what kind of impact it's had on your family.
So I went to the Culinary Institute of America, the top culinary school in the world. And met my husband, and he never heard of sickle cell, didn't know what it was, and decided to take it on. And I think he married me because he thought I was going to live longer. But September we will be celebrating our 18-year anniversary, so I've lived longer. And we have 2 beautiful daughters, now teenagers, twin girls. The stress on families is financially is really burdensome. I can't work full-time anymore because of this disease. So often, if you don't have proper insurance, you're fighting the system. Sometimes you have to make a decision whether if you're going to, this is true because I've had to do this, pay my rent or go to the ER, because if you go to the ER and you're admitted, then you might be able to get Medicare to cover the cost. But if you're not admitted, then that cost is on you. So often I would stay home and not go to the ER because of cost and because of the fear of the mistreatment that I would receive there. And the mistreatment is things like, again, drug seeking, you don't look like you're in pain, someone else's broken arm is more impactful than yours. And emotionally, it's draining because you feel like you are alone. This is America, and you don't want to say that it's racism, but often it is because, you're being mistreated because of your race, and then to add this disease on that most people don't get, it becomes a hurdle for you to try to overcome.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Helen. And I do want to mention that Helen is actually the Massachusetts Sickle Cell Association patient ambassador. So she's very good at telling her inspirational story, and we're so grateful to have you here today. So you may notice right there in the center there is Devin McCordy. He's going to share a little bit more about the importance of shining the light and bringing awareness to sickle cell disease. And, Devin, for the purposes of introductions for folks who don't know him, he's a former New England Patriot who played on the team for 13 seasons. During his time in the NFL, he was part of 3 Super Bowl winning teams and selected for the Pro Bowl numerous times. And today, Devin is an NFL broadcaster for NBC. I am not a sports broadcaster, so I'm sure that other folks could probably do that with more, more fervor. But thank you so much for being with us, Devin. I do want to talk about, what some folks may not know and is relevant to our conversation today is that your twin brother, Jason, has been impacted by sickle cell disease their entire life. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for one, I'm probably the one person at this table that doesn't belong. So it's an honor just sitting here and being able to tell a story like Helen's. But I have a twin brother, Jason, and for our whole life, we grew up around sickle cell disease. My grandfather had sickle cell disease, and when I was younger, I didn't know what that meant. I had a picture with him in the hospital where he had both his legs amputated, and I knew that's how he lived life, right, in a wheelchair and the different things we would do to help him when we were around. And for the most part growing up, my aunt, who was around all the time, seemed, like Helen just said, very normal. And, for me, my father died when I was at the age of 3. He had the sickle cell trait. But when he died, my aunt became that #1 connection back to my father's side of the family. And probably around my sophomore year in college, I started to see what sickle cell meant, the impact it had on her life. She had a hip replacement, and then further in her life during my time in the NFL, she would be on oxygen 24/7. She was legally blind. So for someone who worked for 20 years, traveled the world, very independent, at the age of 10, she was told she'd be lucky to live till 35. And just like Helen, she wore that badge proudly. And for many years, one of the best things that I got to do, whether it was a blood drive we hosted, a 5K walk and run, a casino night, a bowling event, I would get to stand in front of a bunch of young people with sickle cell disease and tell her age. And for a lot of people, when you stand in front of someone or a group of people and you say, hey, I want to tell a story about my aunt, she's 55 years old or she's 60, no one thinks twice. But if you sit in a room with a bunch of sickle cell patients who are 10 or 12 or 17, and you say that age, for them it's eye-opening because they're trying to do everything possible because their whole life they've been told that they wouldn't live long. So for me, I've just been able to be an advocate and watch my aunt's journey. She passed away at the age of 69 in early 2019. For me, it's an honor being in any room like this just to tell her story and make sure her legacy lives on.
Devin, I want to ask you, how important is using your platform? You mentioned this a little bit when you started to share your family story, but how important is it to use your particular platform to highlight this disease? And has anything surprised you in your travel or your appearances that the way people react to when you tell your story?
Well, it's awesome. I get to go places like this, and everyone's excited because the Patriot football players coming in, and then I say why I'm coming in, and it sometimes shocks people. But I think it's so unique, to play in the NFL. Luckily for me, for 13 years, but to win Super Bowls and to do those different things, it allows you in certain rooms that you probably wouldn't be allowed into. So for me to look at my family members, and now because of our campaign, Tackle Sickle Cell, for the last 10 plus years, I look at my guy Ivan here in the second row. He got engaged at our casino night, and him and Stephanie ended up getting married. But for me, that is using your platform, seeing that there's a young man named Jimmy who went through a tough time. His father, obviously sickle cell, your mom and dad do a lot for you, and his father suddenly passed away, and I was with him 2 weeks ago in New York City, and he's a sophomore at the University of Albany, and he wants to create a video game, and he's interning this summer at Embrace Kids Foundation, who has helped him his whole life deal with sickle cell, and I've watched him from the age of 14 now be a sophomore in college. So for me, that's using my platform, being able to not only tell my aunt's story, but to see people live life's dreams and do the things that maybe they question at times, but now they get to do it because maybe somebody like me or my brother or other guys that I've been in the locker room with has decided, hey, in my free time, I want to speak out and speak up for people that don't always have a voice or their voice is not heard by the masses. And it's been an unbelievable journey for me.
Excellent. Devin, thank you so much for your commitment to highlighting this issue. So now I want to go ahead and introduce Dr. Bisola Ojikutu, who is a nationally recognized physician leader, health quality researcher, and community advocate. She was appointed executive director of the Boston Public Health Commission back in July of 2021. And in that role, she leads more than 1,300 employees to protect, preserve, and promote the health and well-being of all Boston residents, particularly the most vulnerable. Dr. Ojikutu, you've had extensive firsthand experience in bringing people from all backgrounds together to spark change. Will you talk to us a little bit about your work and the initiatives like the Health Equity Compact and how it can impact those in the community?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm honored to be in the presence of such esteemed colleagues talking about this crisis. What I would say just to start is that what we're hearing is that we truly need structural change. We need real things to happen, and it's overdue. I think we're at a unique point here in Massachusetts. We actually, if you look across the state, if you look at healthcare institutions, if you look at other organizations, we have more people of color leading them than at any point in time in this state's history. So if not now, then when? When will we have change? The time is actually now. So the Health Equity Compact is doing something that I think is quite unique. Bringing together people of color, leaders of color, to really truly change things, to really truly create that structural change that's needed. So we have about 70 individuals, both in academic institutions, public health, such as myself, healthcare institutions, other organizations around the state who have now mobilized. And we've been meeting now for over a year to talk about how to change things. And one of the important aspects of our work is a bill that's called an Act to Advance Health Equity. Now that's House Bill 1250, Senate Bill 799, and you may say to yourself, okay, that's another bill. You know, what does that really mean? This bill is different. This is an omnibus bill. This is a bill that's really looking to tackle across the board the challenges that we're talking about, the challenges that lead to medical racism, the challenges that cause the injustice, that have caused these deep-seated disparities that we've seen and we keep seeing. So this isn't like something new. This is where we think we want to do something different. So in this particular bill, we're trying to do a number of things. We basically asked for, one, that we increase diversity of healthcare providers. Right now, if you had to ask yourself what percentage of healthcare providers are black across the country, it's 5%. Doctors, only 5% are black. Only 6% are Latinx. So we're looking for diversity amongst healthcare providers. We're also looking to increase access to healthcare in general, so increasing access to mass health across the state. We're also looking to increase data. Dr. Azar has already spoken to this issue of the fact that we don't even really know how many people have sickle cell disease. That's a crime when you think about how long this has been going on. But we don't just want data to define the problem, because we have a lot of data to define the problem. We know this is a problem. What we need the data for is to understand the impact of the interventions. We need to know what works and what doesn't work. And we need systems, real robust systems, to fix this. So it's these kinds of things that we're trying to move forward. And certainly we don't just want the legislation, we want the money. We want the money. We want to shift power, meaning shift it into the patients who need it most, shift it into the diseases where there hasn't been enough resources. We've said this time and time again. The problem here is structural racism. And what is structural racism really? It's about power, it's about hierarchy, it's about privilege, it's about resource allocation. It's about who has the resources and who doesn't. It's about who controls the resources and who doesn't. What we want to do is shift that dynamic so that we are really truly getting to the root of the problem, finally. And so this is what we're trying to do, and I think this is a moment in time to do it. I want to just make one more point that I think is really critical here. You know, there's a moral imperative to do this work, and I believe all of us on this panel, everybody here, you know this is wrong, what's happened. We don't need to tell the story again and again. This is wrong. There's a moral imperative. But some people, they need the economic justification. They need to know where the dollar is. How is this affecting my back pocket, my pocketbook? And the Health Equity Compact, combined with efforts from Blue Cross Blue Shield Foundation, basically came out with a new report, and you may have heard about this. And the economic cost of all that we're seeing in terms of health inequities, $5.9 billion annually in this state alone. Can you imagine what we can do with that money? And we're talking about premature mortality, we're talking about lost wages, we're talking about people who are presenting with chronic diseases over and over and over again, coming to the emergency room over and over and over again without having their issues being addressed. So these are the reasons why the time is now to work on this. And that's what we're trying to do at the Boston Public Health Commission. That's what we're trying to do with the Health Equity Compact.
Absolutely, thank you. And speaking of leadership, I do also want to recognize Rep. Fluker Oakley, who arrived a few minutes ago. So thank you so much for your support. You spoke a little bit to this, Dr. Ojikutu. You know, as the executive director of the Boston Public Health Commission, will you talk a little bit about how you and your team are healing some of the underserved communities, like the sickle cell community?
So I think this is a really important question. We do a lot of work at the Boston Public Health Commission, and many of you all, you know, have heard of the work that we do. We particularly, you know, focus in on racial injustice and all the social determinants of health and all these things in terms of health, in terms of education, in terms of income inequality. These are all things that we do, and we've designed programs for it. But I have to sit here and just be honest with myself and say we haven't done enough, and we certainly haven't done enough in regards to sickle cell disease. And part of the problem is what I just talked about. The problem is that we don't have enough money to do that work. This is not just a healthcare issue. This is a public health issue. Public health is about communities. It's about supporting people. It's about educating people. If you ask people on the street, what is sickle cell disease? Maybe you'd get some sort of response. Maybe somebody would say something about pain or whatever, but they don't really know, and that is our job. And we haven't done a good job because we don't have the funding to do it. It's been very interesting how we've gotten, you know, I'm not gonna say enormous, but we've gotten a lot of money, COVID-19, right? Because that's a problem everybody saw as their own. Now, when you talk about a problem that's not thought to be all of our problem, we don't have that money. And that's what the issue is. We need to see problems as all of our problems. This is about humanity. This is about, like I said, the moral imperative and also the economic imperative. So I would like to see us do more in regards to sickle cell disease, as well as other diseases that we're just not emphasizing as we should.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I do want to also, last but not least, of course, is Representative Chris Worrell of the 5th Suffolk District. Thank you so much for being with us and on our panel this afternoon. Afternoon? It is the afternoon. I get up at 2 a.m., so sometimes I forget what time of day it is. But thank you so much for being here with us. You know, I understand that while you worked in government, both city and state levels. You know, let's talk about that. As a relatively new state representative, why have you taken on an interest in sickle cell disease, and why is this a cause that you're choosing to focus on? As you are hitting the ground running as a state representative.
Yeah. Test. Did you guys hear me? Okay. First of all, I shouldn't even be on this wonderful panel with these amazing people. You got a Super Bowl champion, a wonderful doctor of the city of Boston, and just extraordinary advocate. So thank you guys for sharing your story. Let me tell you the story. About 1984, there was a young woman that gave birth to a baby girl named Suzette Martin. Suzette Martin was born with sickle cell disease. Her parents came from the West Indies, Trinidad and St. Kitts. They didn't know anything about sickle cell, but they had to navigate through this in the early 80s with their daughter through sickle cell. And as Suzette Martin got older, she had to be the person to learn what sickle cell is, what disease actually is, and so on, and teaching her mom and dad what sickle cell is. 15 years later, Suzette met a young strapping man. His name was Christopher Worrell. and we ended up getting married. And so what I'm telling you, my wife has sickle cell. And we have 2 kids of our own. And as the doctors told her at a young age, she wouldn't have kids. She had 2. As the doctors told her, she wouldn't live past a certain time. She passed that. And educating me before I became in this seat about sickle cell, going into the emergency rooms of, I'm not going to name the hospital, but me going past the security guards like, my wife needs help. We need help. Help us. And them looking at us like she just wants to get drugs. And that wasn't the case, because my wife is one of the most stronger than me. I might be big, but she's strong and stronger than me. So when she asks for help, it is a real deal. And from the numerous amount of times, we've been married 10 years now, from the numerous amount of times we had to go to the hospital, from the numerous amount of times I need an ice pack, I need a cold pack. Can you carry me up the stairs? Can you carry me down the stairs? I was there. And I believe, as a legislator, if you cannot fix what's in your house, you can't fix what's in the community. So this is why it's so important for me, because I need to fix what's in my house and be an advocate with what's in my house, and I need to fix what's in the community, because Black and brown people have this disease, and they don't know they have the disease. And I know Brandy's gonna look at me in the daring eye. I represent some of the, one of the most blackest and brownest districts in the Commonwealth. So this affects my community. So this is why I had to jump on. I'm a freshman rep. Things were already moving before I came on, so I had to jump on the tidal wave and make sure voices were heard and making sure that legislation was gonna get passed and money was going to get good.
For sure. So in that vein, as a lawmaker, I mean, what does the legislature need to be doing right now to help serve those communities, right? We know, we spoke about the bill that's ready to be put through and voted upon, hopefully. what needs to be done right now? Because sickle cell has been in existence for decades.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think this bill is amazing. Creates a sickle cell disease steering committee, which creates a committee in the Department of Health, which educational materials and establish a network of statewide stakeholders in this fight. It also establishes a sickle cell disease and sickle cell trait registry. We don't know the numbers. We need to know the numbers. 100,000 people, is that nationally? It's impossible. It's impossible. And also creating a sickle cell disease quality strategy at MassHealth to manage the care. So this is the right steps. And we have some great legislators that already signed on, and we have some staff that's here. We need your bosses to sign on this bill and advocate for this community. I'm telling you guys, I would love to see everyone go back to their boss and say, these are the bills we need to sign on, because this affects a minoritized population that's really, really, really struggling. That's what we need to do.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Y'all could clap for that one, too.
Yeah. I was waiting for it. I was pausing for it now. So with our remaining time, I do want to open it up for any audience questions, and just let me know who you would want to direct that to. Yes, in the striped shirt.
COVID-19 has highlighted all the injustices and inequities that exist in the healthcare system. My question to Dr. Azar is, what kind of medical education is taking place for the incoming residents and fellows? Because as part of the HCM's role for competencies, duty hours requirements, and 360 milestone, residents are now required to work in healthcare, community health centers, so that they can interact with mobile patients. For Dr. Oji, how is the food medicine, because when I work this together at times, we all know, some of us who know about sickle cell, it helps when the patient has a healthy diet. So how is food medicine woven into the healthcare system? A huge part of the food medicine movement is really trying to address the insecurities. And so we all know that Black and brown people are highly affected by sickle cell, yet we don't have enough fresh food, we don't have access to food, we don't have access to transportation, and we don't have access to really good healthcare. So yes, that is my question.
Okay. So thank you for that great question, an amazing question, and you highlight such an important thing. So I can tell you what we're doing at Mass General. We have built a simulation case for our residents, so that all of our brand new interns are being exposed to a simulation case where they get to learn about a patient with sickle cell disease in pain, and then a patient with sickle cell disease who develops one of the most significant complications of the disease, acute chest syndrome, so that they get that hands-on experience. And our sickle cell team, who's all with us today, is in the room with them, helping to guide them through that. A part of that case is also to talk about the significant biases that our patients face as well, so that they can face that head on in a controlled setting, so that they can also be empowered to go out into the wards and educate their attendings about how to talk to and work with our patients as well. That education within Mass General is great. That's cute. But we need to do this across the country. There's such an enormous lack of education. This needs to be a part of the resident curriculum of internal medicine programs across the entire country. We are not doing enough within hematology oncology fellowships. Our colleagues in hemophilia, another chronic congenital illness, terrible disease, but our colleagues in hemophilia have established special fellowship programs to train trainees to grow up to be hemophilia doctors. We are just beginning to do that with sickle cell disease, but we need the funding and the resources to be able to do that across the board.
So if I could just add to that and then speak to the food, if I could add to that and also speak to the food issue. So I'm an associate professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School, so I teach in a number of classes. And one of the things that I want to mention is that at least at some medical schools, and you're right, this is certainly not uniform across the country, there has been a shift from the ideas that were propagated back when I was a medical student of sort of cultural competency, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with being aware of differences in culture, but to really look at structural competency. So what does that mean? That means understanding the power dynamics, the structural racism that impacts both our institutions and our patients' lived experiences, and actually approaching patients from that angle as opposed to approaching them from your own conscious or unconscious bias. And I say that, I hesitated before I said that because I think we need to understand that this isn't about unconscious all the time. Okay, so there is a move in that direction. I think there's also some effort that is incredibly important, not just amongst our residents and our trainees, but just in general about medical mistrust and what that really means. So medical mistrust is the absence of the belief that healthcare providers, healthcare institutions, pharmaceutical industry, the government as a steward of the patient's trust and public health actually care about you as a person, and they actually care about your communities. And if we don't, as healthcare providers, as healthcare institutions, become more trustworthy, we are actually leading to suboptimal outcomes. And I think we need to really understand that that is why people oftentimes don't go back to the emergency room, because you don't trust the care that you will receive. That is why people don't remain retained in care. And there are actually strategies that we're teaching healthcare providers to use just in their simple interactions with patients. How you approach people, how you interview people, how you share information, how you are transparent instead of opaque in regards to your understanding of diseases. So those are two critical things, structural competency and understanding medical mistrust. So I wanted to just say a few words just about the food is medicine issue, because I think that that is a critical piece, not just for sickle cell disease, but for across the board. I mean, food is such a critical issue. And when you look at issues, just to say here in Boston, during the height of the pandemic, 40% of Black, 40% of Latinx individuals reported to having food insecurity and having to use assistance from food banks, from food pantries, so on and so forth, and somewhere around 8% of white individuals. Okay, so there's a clear divide here, and this is about economics, this is about income, this is about wealth. That is the crux of the issue. So then what do we do about that? You know, it's because it's not just about being insecure about food. It's also about the quality of food that you have available. So we have a Mayor's Office of Food Justice, which I think is critically important. Some may say, oh, because that's just the Mayor's Office, but it's very important, because what we're trying to do is move forward with issues like better grocery stores, like informing people who own grocery stores about how to purchase higher quality food, urban farming. People actually, they want to do this. If you go into communities, Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, people are doing it. If you teach folks, you give them the skills so that they can actually do it themselves. And I think these are critical pieces to the work around food justice. And people are really have raised the bar in terms of understanding how important food is, not just, again, to one disease, but just across the board if you start looking at premature mortality and life expectancy in this country.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me? My name is Sharon Marable, and I'm a physician. This is for Dr. Azar. I went to a very prestigious Ivy League medical school. I'm just making fun of my medical school for a second. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is that when I learned about sickle cell disease, and I'm talking in the mid-80s medical school, I also learned that there was a subpopulation of white people, for example, people from Italy, from like Italy, Greece, Middle East, and also brown people from East India who also got sickle cell. But suddenly, in my education, those subpopulation of people ended up having Cooley's anemia as opposed to having sickle cell. So given that we're trying to get the truth out about racism in medicine, can you clarify whether or not people who are not Black or brown also get sickle cell, and whether or not there's really a Cooley's anemia, or is it for white people that have sickle cell but they have to name it something different because of racism in my medical training?
Question. It's a great question. So, there's a cousin disease to sickle cell disease, thalassemia, that impacts hemoglobin, the protein that carries oxygen around our blood. in a very similar ways, but also very different ways. There are a lot of crossovers between these diseases. So some of our patients have sickle cell thalassemia, where they have a combination of the two. And when you're talking about diseases like thalassemia, now you're extending out to populations of the Mediterranean, of the Middle East, of the Indian subcontinent. But I'll tell you, one of the largest populations of patients living with sickle cell disease in the world is in the Indian subcontinent. There's over 1 million people in that country alone that have this disease. We are talking about, we talk about black and brown people in this country. This is a global illness. When we talk about the access to care and the access to resources in this country, or we talked earlier about gene therapy, those are exciting endeavors in this country. But we have to remember that the vast majority of people living with this disease live outside of this country. And once we're able to build a standard of care in the United States, we have a long ways to go before we can carry that to where the majority of people living with this illness actually reside.
Yes, you had a question.
Amazing. You guys hear me? Amazing question. One thing, like everything I do is I do it for a reason. So I asked to be on healthcare finance. Healthcare finance at the state level is amazing and it opens my eyes. I think 3 hearings ago, we talked with the PMBs and the pharmacies and this exact thing, because we have insulin, we have and other drugs that need to be out in historically minority communities. And we expressed our concerns on how are we, not supplying our neighborhoods. And if you look at my district, it's they're closing down. Within my little district, we closed down 3 Walgreens. And these are places that people are going. So we are fighting the fight. We're making sure we're talking to the PMBs, we're talking to the Walgreens and CVSs and making sure that they're well supplied and also looking at different avenues on how we can get medicines. Because Mark Cuban does have a way to get medicine on a cheaper rate and faster and more efficient way. So we're looking at it at a state level and certainly looking at it as healthcare finances. You guys can clap for that one too.
Yes, Dr. Shaw.
The representative is talking about is spot on. Probably 30% of my work week is spent managing opiate prescriptions, because many of my patients go to the pharmacy and they're looked at askance. I've had pharmacies call the police on my 18-year-olds who are showing up who can barely walk. Most of what our team does is in working through prior authorizations and the enormous amounts of red tape, the multiple phone calls that pharmacies make us go through to be able to provide patients with this medication. It is not the fault of our sickle cell patients that they are reliant on opiates. Our healthcare system has given us nothing but these drugs. And until the healthcare system is willing to give us something better, then we have to work with what we have, and that means clearing the decks for our patients to be able to get the medicines that they rely on to get through their day every single day. Part of this House bill that I'm really excited about is that it's going to look into revamping the way that we think about what insurance is covering in this state. That there's a lot of work that needs to be done just in that area alone.
What about the mask?
Oh, yes.
again, a job. The same pharmacist that knew me for many years all of a sudden did not want to provide me with my medication. And just trying to get the hospital to even talk to them was a chore. So often a lot of patients, friends of mine too, had to go without, you know, and it's just this, you have this scarcity mindset that you have to hoard your medication. Not because you're taking it, but just because you don't know when you're going to be cut off. You know, when, you know, someone's going to wake up and say, oh, you can't be on this anymore because you've been on it too long. Or, you know, there's a new treatment out there. Well, that new treatment is not what I'm used to. I want the medication that is going to get me out of bed and get me to my life. So who makes that decision? You know, it's not up to them. It's up to me and my provider to say, okay, let's try this, as well as while you are on something. So during the pandemic, a lot of families suffered because they could not get their medication, they could not get food, you know, and our, you know, community organizations like Massachusetts Sickle Cell Association had to provide, they had to be the food pantries for families because they could not go to the grocery store. There was no pantries in their neighborhood. So there's a lot of money and funding that's needed to our community organizations to help the community. Because often when you come home from the hospital, you're so sick that you can't even feed yourself, you know? How can you make your doctor's appointments when you can't get out of bed because the pain is unbearable or because you're scared to go outside?
That's right.
Yes, we have a last question here.
That's a great question. I really appreciate you bringing it up. And everybody, Dr. McGann is a wonderful sickle cell provider who is in our neighboring state of Rhode Island, is running the Lifespan Sickle Cell Center there in Rhode Island, and doing an absolutely incredible job, sees both kids and adults, which is an incredible work that he's doing there. You know, he brings up this amazing idea, this great idea of our Social Security benefits. So I am currently in a Twitter war with Social Security because you know, we went on to the website a couple of weeks ago to try to find benefits for one of our patients, and we were stunned to see that sickle cell disease is not on the list of diseases that are covered. This is a list that covers chronic congenital diseases I have never heard of, diseases I never studied in medical school. Every malignancy under the sun is on this list, but sickle cell disease is not on this list. And when I reached out to the Social Security Department to ask them about this, their response to me was that the disease is not severe enough. And they told me that the symptoms are mild and manageable. And so this is where, from a foundational, fundamental level on our federal government's basis, there's a lack of understanding of what our patients are going through every single day. We need a top-down approach to fix this.
Oh, do we have time for one more question? Yeah. I can give her mine.
Hi, Dr. Azar.
Hi, sweetheart.
Everyone, my name's Pleasant Niles, and I'm also a new patient of Dr. Azar's. Now, Dr. Azar, I completely agree with you when you say that there's not enough information about sickle cell out here. Now, I come across on discussions about our ill diseases on Facebook and sometimes Instagram, and me, I'm creating Heal Loudly to help others uplift themselves about their sickle cell, and also to help information out to I'm sorry, I'm very nervous, everyone.
That's adrenaline.
That's right. That's right. That's
You're great, sweetheart.
I think that for like a better way, like you see all these commercials out there about these new medications about different drugs and everything, but how come there's no, commercials based on sickle cell anemia and families that help them, or families that don't know what to do and are looking for information on how to help their friends or their family with their disease?
That is such an excellent question, and it is an incredible question. We are so many miles behind in our understanding of this illness that we are not developing drugs nearly fast enough to be able to manage the disease. I talked earlier about the fact that for the last 30 years, all we've had is hydroxyurea, one drug that has been available to help patients with this disease live longer. The answer is simple. Racism within our healthcare system, racism within medical research. There aren't enough attention or resources have been invested in this disease. We are being outspent philanthropically 80-1 compared to cystic fibrosis. Terrible disease, but outspent at the NIH level, on a industry level, on philanthropic level. When you compare us to hemophilia, the disease I was talking about earlier, hemophilia is federally funded. The federal government provides millions of dollars and actually defines what the standard of care is in hemophilia, what resources need to be invested in it. We don't even have anything that resembles that for sickle cell disease. We have so much ground to make up. There is everybody in this room knows the difference between equality and equity. We can be equal, but that is not equitable. We cannot just be given what all of our colleagues in other disease states have been handed. We need more to make up the ground that we have lost over a century.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We could talk about this particular topic all day long and into next week, but we do want to be respectful of folks' time, and I just want to thank you all for allowing me to moderate this discussion. I'm Crystal Haynes from Boston. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over back to Jackie.
Please, please, please give our panel a huge round of applause. Now turn that applause to our moderator, Crystal. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. This was an amazing conversation. I thank the panelists, Representative Morrell, Dr. Ojikutu, Devin, Helen, and Charles, my partner in crime. I thank you all for taking the time for joining us today and shining a light on sickle cell disease and on this important topic. So thank you. To everyone in the audience for taking the time, we know, for some of you, just to get here and seeing you all here today, we appreciate you. And we thank you for doing this. We thank our partners. I see many of our partners in the room, so we say thank you. But the most important person I want to acknowledge are our warriors. We have so many warriors. Are you able to stand? Stand, warriors. Stand, let me acknowledge, because that's why we're here. Don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid. Stand. Give them a round of applause. Thank you. We are honored. We as an organization are honored to serve you. And we are here to stand beside you as long as it takes to advocate. And we ask that you all, I don't know how many of you have taken the sheet here, but you grab a copy and you call your legislatures. You live in the city of Boston or, no, actually, if you live anywhere in Massachusetts, actually, call your legislatures. We need to get Act H1161, S678, an act to improve sickle cell care. We need it to pass. Okay? So y'all gonna call. Is that a promise? Yes. That's a promise. Thank you. Now for this, I just want to thank our partners at Vertex, Richard, Aaron, and Matt. Thank you so much for your partnership. They have been instrumental in helping us along the way, and we want to thank Jeff Sanchez and his team at Sanchez and Sanchez Strategies, Aaron, Alicia, thank you. You guys are amazing. We also want to thank former Speaker Tom Finneran, who's advocating for us as well and out there silently in the background doing it for us. We know you're doing it, former Speaker, and we thank you as well. And most important, we're going to say thanks to Representative Bud Williams and his team. For hosting this event. We just want to, for shine the light on sickle cell disease in the State House. How's that? Great job. So thank you so much. And to all our legislators and the legislative aides, we're not going to forget you. You guys are the ones who are behind the scenes doing the work. We want to say thank you for advocating for our bill and just taking our calls. We say thank you. Thank you, Rep. Williams, once again, Bud Williams. Thank you, Rep. Dave Rogers. Thank you, Senator Liz Miranda. Thank you, Rep. Brenda Fluker Oakley, for signing on and partnering with us for our bills this year. We have our budget going through, and we have our sickle cell omnibus bill that we want to pass, and they're working with us to get this done. So thank them. And for this, we just want to say this takes us to our end of our program. We'll see you all next. Oh, by the way, join us September 23rd. I'm going to put a plug. September 23rd, Franklin Park for a walk for sickle cell. Be there or be square. Panel is there. So thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.